Arthur Schopenhauer wrote a single sentence, just one, and yet, its impact still lingers with men today. Not because it was cruel or false, but because it spoke a truth that many are reluctant to face. Schopenhauer wasn't interested in offering comfort. His intent was to be brutally honest, to articulate something raw and real. This isn't about anger. It's about the quiet pain many carry, the unspoken disconnect between men and women, the ache that hides behind silence and longing. In this video, we'll explore that sentence, not to validate it, but to understand why it still resonates so deeply, why it unsettles, why it refuses to be forgotten. Some words pass through us like air, heard and gone, forgotten by nightfall, but others stay. They don't need to be loud or poetic to cut deep. They linger because they feel real. Schopenhauer, often misunderstood and dismissed, penned one of those rare lines. He didn't write it to inspire or provoke applause. He wrote it because he believed it, and that honesty, however uncomfortable, touched something raw in many men. It wasn't a quote designed to stir debate or create controversy. It was a reflection, a hard, unflinching look into a space within the male experience that few ever acknowledge. A place filled with unanswered questions, quiet fears, and silent disappointments. A place most men never speak of, not to their partners, not to their friends, sometimes not even to themselves. This wasn't a sentence meant for textbooks or podiums. It was more like a mirror, cold, one showing a truth many instinctively hide from, that love, desire, and emotional connection between men and women often carry more pain than anyone dares to admit. And when someone finally puts that into words, no matter how harshly it strikes a nerve, that single line didn't create suffering, it revealed it. It pointed to a weight many men have long been carrying. That's why it still echoes today, not because of who wrote it, but because of what it exposed, a kind of emotional burden that rarely finds a voice. From a young age, boys are taught to suppress vulnerability, fall down, get up, get hurt, stay quiet, heartbroken, move on. There's an unspoken code, never show weakness, and even when no one says it aloud, you feel it in the way people look at you, in the expectations to be strong no matter what. Over time, this forms a hidden ache, not physical, but emotional, the kind that grows from being misunderstood, from giving love and still feeling alone, from trying your best and still being told it's not enough. And the worst part, there's often no outlet, no one asking the real questions. Are you truly okay? Is there something you've never told anyone? This is the space Schopenhauer tapped into, not with sympathy, but with blunt philosophy. He didn't try to heal. He didn't offer hope. He simply acknowledged a truth that many men couldn't articulate themselves. He wasn't providing a solution, just a form of recognition. You're not the only one who feels this way. And sometimes, that's more powerful than comfort. When Schopenhauer wrote that sentence, however cold it may have sounded, he named a pain that had long gone unnamed. For many men, it was the first time anyone had done that. But let's pause for a moment. Many hear his words and instantly respond, that's misogynistic, that's hateful, that's outdated. And maybe, in part, they're right. But what if his intent wasn't to attack women? What if he was expressing the emotional confusion men experience in love and intimacy? What if it wasn't rooted in hate, but in heartache? Think about it. When people feel betrayed or lost, they often speak from a place of hurt, not out of cruelty, but out of emotional exhaustion. Schopenhauer may not have been correct in a moral sense, but he might have been sincere, painfully honest about the emotional disorientation men can feel when their ideals about love fall apart. Love and the lingering pain. Nearly 200 years have passed since Schopenhauer wrote that single line, and yet it still strikes a chord with many men today. Not because it's universally accepted or praised for its wisdom, but because it expresses something many men have never been able to articulate. Modern men are constantly encouraged to open up, to be emotionally transparent, to speak their truth. Yet beneath that invitation lies an unspoken boundary. Share your feelings, but only if they're packaged neatly. Be honest, but not too raw. Show vulnerability, but don't appear weak. And so, many men hold their silence not due to apathy, but because they've learned that the world often doesn't know how to receive their pain. This isn't physical pain. It's harder to describe. It's the ache of being emotionally unseen, of loving deeply and still feeling disconnected, of being in a relationship that seems fine on the outside, but inside feels lonely and hollow. Psychologists call it emotional suppression or masked vulnerability. Philosophers might describe it as a kind of existential alienation, the sense that even love can't quite reach the deepest parts of you. That's why Schopenhauer's words still pierce through, even today. Not because they were accurate, but because they gave form to a silent grief many men carry. A grief they've never voiced, never named, and never been asked about. What hurts isn't the sentence itself, it's the reflection it casts. When men hear it, many don't respond with anger, they fall silent. They pause. They feel something they can't explain, and that silence reveals everything. Because some statements don't teach, they uncover. Schopenhauer, despite his shortcomings, revealed a kind of pain that still lingers unspoken in the hearts of many. Understanding the man behind the words to grasp the weight of that sentence, we first need to understand the man who wrote it. Arthur Schopenhauer was born into material privilege but not emotional warmth. His father was stern, distant, and emotionally inaccessible. When Arthur was still young, his father took his own life, leaving behind a legacy of unresolved pain. His mother, Johanna, was intellectually gifted and socially vibrant, but emotionally detached. She viewed Arthur as brooding and unlovable, once even declaring that he was incapable of love. Rejection from the very people meant to nurture and protect him didn't just cause pain, it reshaped his entire emotional framework. Schopenhauer never married. He lived most of his life alone, not because he despised human connection, but because he had lost faith in love. His philosophy centered around one core belief: desire is the root of suffering, not just a craving for pleasure or success, but the longing to be loved, to be truly seen, to be understood. So when Schopenhauer wrote about relationships or about women, he wasn't writing from a place of romance. He was writing from a place of emotional injury, from wounds that time had not healed. The sentence that continues to stir so much controversy wasn't a cold, intellectual statement. It was the voice of someone who had experienced a deep emotional rupture and never quite recovered. It wasn't an act of hatred. It was an expression of heartbreak. The sentence that shook so many. So, what was the sentence? What did Schopenhauer write that continues to stir debate, provoke outrage, and leave many men speechless? There are multiple translations, but its essence is this: women are naturally inclined to obey, and worse still, they are childlike, superficial, short-sighted, and guided more by emotion than reason. On the surface, it's jarring. It sounds harsh, dismissive, and unmistakably out of sync with today's understanding of gender equality and emotional complexity. But if we stop and look beyond the offensive surface, if we allow ourselves to sit with the discomfort, something more profound may emerge. Because Schopenhauer wasn't simply describing women. He was revealing a disillusionment, a shattering of the romantic ideal many men carry into relationships. The dream of being completely understood, the fantasy that love will be pure, effortless, and untainted by confusion or miscommunication. And when that ideal fails, when the real complexities of love and connection take hold, it often leaves a wound that feels strangely isolating. That's the pain Schopenhauer gave voice to. Not a universal truth, but a deeply personal disappointment. One that, for many men, still feels hauntingly familiar. When reality doesn't match the dream, something in a man quietly fractures. That's the real point. Schopenhauer was circling not just about women, but about what desire does to the human heart. When a man falls in love, he doesn't always see the person in front of him clearly. He builds an image, often shaped by longing or loneliness, and calls it love. But that image isn't love, it's hope, dressed in projection. And when that ideal begins to unravel, when the woman doesn't match the fantasy, when the relationship becomes distant or emotionally confusing, that's when the sentence stings. Not because men believe in stereotypes, but because they suddenly realize they may have been looking through a lens of illusion, that they were not deceived by someone else, but by their own expectations. That's the part no one really the controversial statement itself, but the unspoken emotional reality underneath, that many men have given love their all and still felt emotionally adrift, unseen, or quietly hurt. So when Schopenhauer's cold words appear, what strikes isn't the claim itself, but the reflection it offers. It gives shape to a quiet suffering many men didn't realize they were holding, and when they hear it not with agreement, but with familiarity, stops them. It creates a stillness, a question. Why does this feel so close to home, even if I disagree with it? That moment of pause, that is where something opens. Still relevant today, let's bring it back to the present too now. Even though lived in a different era, the emotional confusion he wrote about hasn't vanished. It simply wears new clothes. Modern men aren't living in the 1800s, but many still carry a silent weight. They're told to open up, but only if it sounds polished. They're encouraged to be vulnerable, but only in ways that don't make others uncomfortable. Society says, be emotionally present, but don't be too emotional. Be soft but stay strong. And caught in these mixed messages, a lot of men become emotionally disoriented. They don't know where to place their feelings, or if anyone would truly listen if they did speak. So, they shut down. They distract themselves. They perform strength on the outside, while quietly unraveling on the inside. When relationships grow distant, when they feel unheard or emotionally disconnected, many men don't lash out, they fade. They withdraw. They blame themselves silently. That's the emotional terrain Schopenhauer was trying, however awkwardly, to explore. He didn't have therapy. There were no podcasts, no self-help culture, no vocabulary for emotional processing. All he had was philosophy. And so, he wrote from pain. Unfiltered raw pain that may not have sounded gentle, but came from somewhere real. Maybe his statement wasn't balanced. Maybe it lacked compassion or scientific grounding. But it felt emotionally real. To a man, it resonates with men who have never been taught how to name what they're feeling. Because this kind of confusion didn't die with Schopenhauer. It evolved. It spread. Even now, despite progress, many men still don't know what love truly expects from them. Still feel disconnected from their own emotions. Still wonder if they're enough, if anyone truly sees them. That's why his words still hit a nerve. Not because men agree with them, but because they echo something they've long carried in silence. The smile that hides the storm. Many men smile not because they're content, but because they've been taught to. From early on, the rules are clear. Don't cry, don't complain, don't break. So instead of expressing pain, they bury it. Behind work, behind jokes, behind silence. Psychologists call it emotional suppression. Philosophers call it inauthentic living. It's when someone is hurting, but pretends they're fine because the cost of being open feels too high. This is why Schopenhauer's bitter sentence still lingers in discussions. Not because it speaks universal truth, but because it reveals a hidden one, that many men feel emotionally lost, uncertain in love, and unable to express what's going on inside. This isn't about placing blame. It's about seeing the pain beneath the performance, the quiet suffering behind "I'm fine," the laughter that conceals loneliness, the stillness that hides inner chaos. And when someone, even in a flawed or unkind way, says something that touches that hidden pain, it doesn't create the wound. It simply brings it to light. Let's be clear from the start. This video isn't about blame. It's not an attack on women, nor is it an excuse to stir resentment. If you truly pay attention to what Schopenhauer was trying to express, something unexpected emerges. He wasn't just speaking about women. He was confronting what romantic longing does to the male psyche. His words, however, blunt, weren't aimed at condemnation. They were an attempt to describe the emotional haze men often find themselves in when desire clouds judgment. And let's be honest, many of us have been there. Falling in love can feel like everything finally makes sense. You idealize, you hope, you see not just the person, but a dream. Not because you're naive, but because you're human. But when that dream dissolves, when reality steps in and things no longer align with the fantasy, it doesn't just sting. It breaks something inside. That's what Schopenhauer was really highlighting. He wasn't warning us about women. He was warning us about our own vulnerability in the face of unchecked longing. How infatuation can distort perception. How unmet expectations create quiet suffering. And that isn't just a male issue. That's a human issue. We all construct ideals. We all get it wrong. We all hurt when we love without clarity. So, this isn't just a message for men, and it's certainly not against women. It's a reflection on how easily we lose ourselves in desire and how philosophy, at its best, can help us step back and understand that loss. Not to blame, but to heal. Because once we stop pointing outward, we can begin to see what's happening within. What should we take from this? So, what's the real takeaway here? It's not resentment, not division, not judgment. What we take away is something far more valuable and far more challenging. Understanding, the courage to pause and reflect, the willingness to ask uncomfortable questions without rushing to assign fault, the recognition that philosophy isn't always kind or easy. It's not designed to soothe us, it's meant to wake us up. Schopenhauer's words may not have been graceful, they weren't gentle or even fair, but they struck a nerve, a deep, quiet truth that many had felt but never verbalized. That emotional resonance, that sharp moment of recognition is rare in a world filled with noise. You don't have to agree with him, you don't have to approve of how he said it. But maybe it's worth asking, why does this still resonate? Why, even today, do so many men feel something when they hear it? Because the real power of philosophy doesn't lie in being right. It lies in helping us uncover what's hidden, in giving language to what we've struggled to express. And that's why Schopenhauer's sentence still matters, not because it's perfect, but because it made people stop, feel, and reflect. And sometimes, that's the most honest thing we can do. Final thoughts: if this video made you pause, even for a moment, then it's done what it was meant to do. Now it's your turn. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this meaningful, hit subscribe for more content that digs beneath the surface. Tap the bell so you don't miss what comes next. This isn't just a channel, it's a space for thinkers, feelers, and seekers, for those who want more than sound bites, for those who are ready to explore the deeper layers of life and love. Let's keep asking, let's keep reflecting, let's keep going together.